you haven't watched the other videos on my channel, I am right now forever, dealing with EDS and a bunch of its comorbidities, and I am scheduled for a craniospinal fusion in December to combat some craniocervical instability. So I was just wanting to kind of document that process because other people have done that, and it is immensely helpful for me to be able to check out their videos and see, what I have to worry about, look forward to, or tips and things they had. So I just kind of wanted to add mine to that depository of things that are already out there. But October is Dysautonomia Awareness Month, so kind of the start of my journey into going from, a normal life to a medical life deals with dysautonomia. So I wanted to get out a video of what my experience is with that and how that kind of plays into my life on a daily basis. So dysautonomia is a problem with your autonomic nervous system. So there are processes in your body like regulating your temperature, regulating your blood pressure, regulating your heart rate that you don't have to think about. You don't be like, hey heart, it's time for you to beat. Your body just does it for you. But if you have dysautonomia, there's a kind of a problem with that. So those instinctive characteristics of your body, those instinctive processes in your body, they don't work as well. So for example, I cannot tolerate the heat. Being in the heat is extremely hard for me because my body doesn't regulate my temperature so well. My heart rate is always insanely high. My resting heart rate sitting here is probably 110. So things like my blood pressure is pretty low. So you can see that there's an issue with those autonomic nervous system processes. Dysautonomia is actually really common. It affects about 70 million people, and it's usually comes from something. It's usually not a primary problem. It's usually secondary to another issue, and it has a laundry list of related comorbidities. But even though it's pretty common, it's very underdiagnosed and very misdiagnosed. It's pretty common in young women. And young women in the medical world face a lot of gaslighting. I know people who have taken decades. Most people have waited at least 4 years to get diagnosed with this and had many misdiagnoses along the way. A lot of times people are told that it's stress, it's anxiety, depression, which is incredibly frustrating when there's something wrong with your body and doctors are explaining it off as something else. So it's a really great tool to have this October as the awareness month because I know a lot of people in the disability advocacy space are trying to raise awareness and bring more attention to that, so more medical professionals will know what to be looking for. So I actually saw a meme on someone's site the other day that said getting diagnosed with POTS is a form of dysautonomia. I'll get to that in a minute. But getting diagnosed with dysautonomia is wild. They strap you to a table until you pass out, and then the doctor's like, here's a French fry as your prescription. Because that's pretty much what happened on my journey. I relate to that a lot. So my senior year of high school, I was pretty sick and I missed a lot of school. What actually happened was I was in class, and I do remember this. I was in my AP Lit class, and we had gone to the library for some reason, and I remember I got really hot and my stomach started hurting so bad. So I asked my teacher if I could go to the bathroom, and our library was here in the middle of the school, and the bathrooms were over here. And I don't really remember the rest, but I made it to a bench right here, and I think I was just passed out on the bench. I think that's what happens, which in hindsight, I wish I would have been smart enough to be stay in the room where my friends were who could have helped me. But this was my first time fainting, so I had no idea what was going on. I just knew I did not feel well. And some kid in my grade who I wasn't friends with, I didn't know well, but what an angel, like came up and sat with me. He was like, "Are you okay?" And I don't remember what happened, but I guess he went and got the nurse. So then I fainted like in the nurse's office. My mom had to come pick me up, and that kind of started this whole diagnosis. But thank you to that kid who I never talked to again and never said thank you to, for not leaving me stranded in the hallway. Yeah, I don't really remember exactly how the process went, but I'm pretty sure I like went to my family doctor, who sent me to a cardiologist, and the cardiologist referred me to Children's Hospital in DC. So I went there. They did what they called a poor man's tilt table test, which I'll get to tilt table tests in a minute. And they diagnosed me with POTS very quickly. Like, I had no delay, no misdiagnosis, no gaslighting. It was a really, really easy process, which I know is completely not the norm. So I'm very thankful for that. But when they diagnosed me, it was basically like, go drink Gatorade and go eat a lot of salt. My doctor told me she normally tells people to stay away from the middle of the grocery store, only to shop on the outsides. But for me, I should stay away from the outsides and only shop in the middle. Which took me a while to get what she's saying, but if you visualize most grocery stores, you know, you walk in and it's like fruits, vegetables, the bakery, the meat section, milk and eggs. So like all the healthy stuff is on the outside and all the processed junk is in the middle. But for me to live, that's what I have to eat. I need a ton of salt. Because of this dysautonomia. So the form of that I got diagnosed with is called POTS, or postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. So postural is just referring kind of to the position of your body. Orthostatic is, you know, what gravity level, like standing, that your body's in. Tachycardia is an increased heart rate, and then obviously syndrome. So what that basically means is that when I stand up, my heart rate is incredibly high and my body can't cope with that and I pass out. So to combat that, they say drink a ton of water, Gatorade, which has sodium in it, because you need a ton of salt to make your body absorb the water or liquids that you're drinking. So the salt intake is also incredibly important for combating POTS. Yeah, so like I was saying, I initially had this poor man's tilt table test done, and a tilt table test is one of the ways to test for POTS. So it kind of looks like a medieval torture device, but you're laying flat on a table and you are strapped to the table, and then they use a machine or like mechanism that will take the table and it will slowly make it upright. And keep in mind, you're strapped to the table the whole time. And by doing that, they can see what your heart rate and your blood pressure do at different changes in gravity, and to see, you know, are you passing out when you stand up? So the reason they need something like that is because when you stand up, you're using the blood, like you're clenching your legs, so it's pushing the blood upwards. POTS, what happens is when you stand up, basically your body can't cope and all your blood pools in your legs. Then there's not enough blood for, like, you know, your heart and your head, and you faint to kind of cope with that. So fainting is something I'm extremely familiar with. I've done it a billion times. I actually think it's a really useful tool of the body because it can get you into a position to fix itself. So it's really your body's tool to help you. That being said, I have been through a lot of medical stuff. I had a heterotopic pregnancy, which involves an ectopic pregnancy, which is incredibly painful. I've had surgeries. I had a C-section. I labored to 9 centimeters with no medicine. I've broken a million things. Like, I have been through medical stuff, and fainting, I think it is one of the most painful things that you can do. It's not necessarily like, you know, stabbing pain, but oh my gosh, it just feels so bad to faint, like so bad. The poor man's tilt table test is they have you like sitting and then you stand, or you'll be like laying, sitting, stand, like keep changing gravity there, and they'll be monitoring your blood pressure and your heart rate at those different places. So it's not as good as a real tilt table test because, like I said, when you're standing, you're using the blood in your legs, which is helping your, blood pump and everything. So you can't get a true reading from the poor man's one, but it worked to diagnose me for all intents and purposes. So I got my official POTS diagnosis from a poor man's tilt table test. I did go on to have actually 2 or 3, I think, actual tilt table tests. So that was my senior year of high school. Things were, fine after that. I just drank a lot of Gatorade, ate a lot of junk food that was processed and high in sodium. So like when I look at something, if I get like a freezer meal out and it says 39% of your daily value of sodium, I'm like, great. Meanwhile, everybody else in the world is like, oh my gosh, that's going to clog my arteries and make me die. And I'm like, that's how I live my life. So I was pretty good for a couple years. I do think in grad school, I ended up not feeling so well. So in 2014, I went abroad for a year after undergrad. I taught English in Taiwan on a Fulbright fellowship, and I felt great. I don't know what it was. Like if Taiwan is my second home. I'm obsessed with it. I love it so much. I don't know if like I'm just meant to be there and I should move back, or probably more likely is what they're using in the food, like their sodium. I don't know what it was, but I felt so good. Like Taiwan was so good to my body. I am naturally very thin. Like I cannot gain weight. I try so hard and I can't. In Taiwan, I gained some weight. Like it was so good for my body. But then I came home and my body like went into shock. Literally the day I came home, I fainted again for the first time since high school. And it'd been so long, so I didn't really know what was going on. I knew I didn't feel good, so I was with my family at my parents' house. And I walked up to my room and I just like laid down on the floor with my legs in the air, which I will get to that in a little bit. Luckily my brother came in and found me, and my parents took me to the ER and I got some fluids and I was fine. But that kind of started the next wave of my POTS problems. So 2015-16 was really a bad wave. I think POTS tends to, at least for me and for my friends who have this, it seems to come in waves. So you'll have like good periods and bad, and 2015-16 was bad for me, which is unfortunate because I was in grad school and I got married, so it was a pretty rough time to not feel well. So I started seeing a neurologist and a cardiologist at home. The neurologist told me, she had me do like some brain imaging, a couple, I don't remember which imagings they were, like an EEG or EKGs, I don't know. But on the imaging, she saw that I was having seizures. So we were like, oh my goodness, like, am I not fainting? Like, are these spells really seizures? Because I would get a lot of pre-syncope, which I know now what that is, but at the time I didn't. So we were like, oh my gosh, I'm having seizures. So she put me on Keppra and Lamictal both at the same time, which is kind of a lot for someone who's like newly diagnosed with seizures. And I wasn't having like, grand mal seizures when you picture when someone falls and they're like convulsing. They were called complex partial seizures, which there are a myriad of types of seizures. So, anyway, so she had me on these seizure medicines, and seizure medicines are very intense. Like, they can change you, they can change your personality. So I was taking those and I hated them. So I started seeing a new neurologist and cardiologist at George Washington. The neurologist was like, I see nothing here that sounds like you're having seizures. She was like, unfortunately, I can't just pull you off this medicine though, because going off of seizure medicine is intense. You have to like wean yourself off. And she was like, if you are having seizures, I can't just take you off this medicine. She's like, so we're going to have to prove that you're not having them. So I had to go for a week-long video telemetry EEG, which I will do another video about. But basically, I was in the hospital for a week and I was being monitored 24/7. I was hooked to like 70 electrodes all over my body. And basically, they spent a week trying to make me have seizures. So flashing the lights, noise, all kinds of stuff. They spent a long time trying to make me have seizures. So at the end of the week, they ended up, the whole time I was like, guys, I am not having seizures. I have POTS. Like, that's what this is. So at the end of the week, they did a tilt table test, a real tilt table test, and found that, shockingly, I wasn't having seizures. I was having POTS. But anyway, I had also had another tilt table test done, and I can't remember if it was before or after. That one, I think it was before. I had that one done at Johns Hopkins. They have a great POTS program. If you are in the area, Hopkins is excellent. But so I went there for I think it was my first tilt table test, and so POTS is not necessarily like when you stand up, your heart rate skyrockets, because everybody, when you stand up, your body does things to accommodate your new position. But POTS is kind of that extended, 10 minutes after standing, your heart rate is still really elevated. So that's why they do kind of this test, and they'll see like how long you stay up here with your heart rate high. But for me, both 2 times I've had it done, the table got to about here before I fainted hard. I never even made it up more than 30 degrees. So my POTS diagnosis was kind of just doubled down there. But I did just want to go over some of my POTS symptoms. So heat intolerance is one. I am always incredibly hot all the time, especially in the back of my neck and my wrists, always very hot. Fainting, so syncope and pre-syncope. I haven't actually fainted in a while because I know how to make myself not faint now, but I still get a lot of pre-syncope. Basically, my worst symptom is, like I said at the beginning of this video, sorry I'm clearing my throat so much. I'm having a really hard time swallowing because of the Chiari and instability, so sorry about that. But anyway, like I said, if I stand up, I can stand there for 10 seconds before I'm pretty much gonna faint, or I have to do something to make myself not faint. My blood pressure is usually pretty low. My heart rate is sky high. And POTS and dysautonomia come with some gastro issues, but those are pretty much my main ones, is fainting. Sorry, I was making myself a note for something to include in the tips and tricks video. Okay. So that was kind of my POTS journey.
Hi, sorry that ended so abruptly. The Amazon guy was here, so I went to go get that and forgot to ever come back to it. But I think I pretty much covered my POTS journey, symptoms, diagnosis, and I'm working on a tips and tricks video to cover some of the things I've learned to help manage my symptoms over the years. So happy Dysautonomia Awareness Month, and I hope that a lot of awareness and attention is given to dysautonomic disorders such as POTS this month, so it's a little bit easier to get diagnosed and to get the treatment that we all need and deserve.